This is going to be the description of the Newton's Law project. The first thing we're going to go over is Sir Isaac Newton lived in the 1600s. He, like all scientists, made observations about the world around him. Over time, his observations have collected data and most of them have been proven. And because of that, we now call them Newton's three laws of motion. And his laws of motion explain objects at rest, objects in constant motion, accelerated motion, and then how to describe balance and unbalanced forces and how they act on motion. So there are three states. The first law of motion is an object in motion will stay in motion and an object at rest will stay at rest. So below the first law of motion, it gives you a good description of what the first law of motion says, or Newton's first law, and that's going to be inertia. That's going to be the main idea for the first law. Now the second law is the force of an object is equal to its mass times its acceleration. So acceleration depends on the mass of an object. The more mass an object has, the more inertia it has, which means the harder it is to accelerate. Think about when you're pushing a car. It's going to be a lot harder to push a car than it would be to push a chair because the mass of the car is much more than the mass of the chair. So you're going to have more inertia, which is more of a push, in order for it to accelerate. Then the third law is for every action there is an equal but opposite reaction. So this one explains, like if you were to kick a soccer ball. Well, the soccer ball, your force that your foot is putting on the soccer ball will then push the ball with an equal amount of force that the ball will then move. So if you barely tap the soccer ball will just barely roll. If you really kick the ball hard, you put a lot of force into it, and the ball will move with a much higher force. That's the third law of motion. Now, this is what you're going to do in this project. So you're going to illustrate one of the three laws of motion. You're going to work with your partner. You're going to choose one of the laws of motion. You're going to be teaching your class about it. So you can do this as a poster, a pamphlet, a video, or just demonstrations. Now, if you have demonstrations, you need some way of getting out the information other than just by word. So if you're going to do a demonstration, let's say you chose Newton's third law of motion, you want to kick a soccer ball in the classroom, I'm fine with that, but you need to maybe have like a PowerPoint with at least one slide that discusses or shows a video about what the force and the information behind kicking a soccer ball. You may want to include maybe a real life article that you get maybe from Newsella or off the internet, CK12, about kicking some type of sports ball and then why you did it in the classroom. I don't want you to just kick the soccer ball and then talk about it. You need to have some type of visual aid that the other students in the room can use to help them understand your law. Then if you have another way of doing it, then you need to let me know. And as long as you and I can come to some type of agreement, then we will, I'll let you use that type of demonstration. Now, if you are making a pamphlet, I will make copies for you. You'll have to email them to me, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Images can be hand-drawn, cut from a magazine, or from the internet. Now, here's the deal. Myself nor any other teacher nor the library should be asked to print things out for you. If you don't have a printer at home, which is fine, then you need to either hand draw your pictures or cut from a magazine. Do not ask another teacher or the library to print copies off for you. You don't have to have them. You can come up with a different idea. You must include an explanation in your own words of how the illustration demonstrates or goes with your law. So if you're not doing a demonstration and you just have the visual representation, you need to have the picture and then you need to have a description beside the picture of how that is describing your law of motion. Then make sure that your project is colorful, neat, and interesting. Use the checklist that we're about to go over to complete every aspect of your project. This will be a 100-point test grade, and there's a rubric that we'll go over as well. So here is the checklist. Now keep in mind, you are only going to be doing one law of motion. You do not do all three laws. So if you're doing Newton's second law of motion, then you will go through the checklist and make sure you have every single object or every single thing in that checklist. Make sure you have an accurate description of the second law in your own words. This is where your visual aid will come in handy. Then that visual illustration accurately represents the law. There should be no errors in the illustration or the explanation. If you say that you're doing Newton's second law of motion, then you need to talk about acceleration and mass. And if you don't, then I'm going to assume then you did not do your work, and that would be considered an error. The law was completely explained, and then you have visual and descriptions are clearly labeled with appropriate law located together. Then for your presentation, so you can thoroughly explain the law and the connection between your description, your demonstration, and your visual aid that you chose. Your presentation does not need to be longer than 5 minutes. Both people in your group need to be speaking or demonstrating throughout the entire presentation. I do not want it to be one-sided. Your presentation of the information needs to be clear so that the class can understand the content and what you are saying. So this project is going to be in place of taking notes. So everyone in the class will be paying attention to your project, and they will be taking notes on your project. Then they will use what they learned from all of the different presentations to take their test on forces. So if your project is not good and does not teach the law well, then the people in your class will not do well on that portion of the test. And same goes for them trying to teach you. So it is in everyone's best interest if you do your best on your project. If you are using a video, the camera needs to be stable, the sound needs to be clear and understandable, and transitions are smooth. I do not have a camera. I do not have any type of technology, nor do I have the know-how to help you do the video. If you do not have the technology or the know-how to do it, then do not make a video. If demonstrating to the class, you need to provide all the supplies. If you do not have the supplies, then you can come and talk to me and we can try to come up with a plan. I can try to get you some supplies together, or we can at least come up with a plan of how you can do that. If you're using a video, make sure you're saving it to a format that can be displayed to the class. You may want to come to me before the project is due, which is Wednesday, to make sure that it's going to open up on my computer correctly. If you get to the day that the project is due and you've not come and checked with me to make sure your project is working, and then it does not work on my computer, I'm going to count off late points because you should have prepared adequately prior to your presentation date. The pamphlets, these should be emailed to me the day before your presentation so I can make copies. Copies will be made in black and white. If you have something that needs to be in color, then you can email me a colored copy of the pamphlet and I'll pull it up on my computer. If we get to the day of your presentation and you needed copies made and you did not send them to me prior to your presentation, I will be counting points off because you did not prepare adequately. So the overall description of the project, you need to have effort and time put into the completion of the project. It should be evident. The project should be neat. Information should be clear and organized. The project should demonstrate creativity. The project should demonstrate a complete understanding of all of the laws. So you're only talking about one law, but you will be taking a test on all three laws, and that will be based off of your knowledge that you gain from other projects. So you need to make sure that your project is done adequately so that everyone can learn from it. The last page is the rubric. This is also found on Schoology exactly like this. The law and the description, the most you can get is 40 points. You need to make sure that all information in the description is accurate, the illustrations are accurate, there are no errors, and all information is complete. For your presentation, that's worth 30 points. Students demonstrate a thorough understanding of the content of their presentation, meaning you do not need to be reading directly from your content. You are only using it as a reference because it should be clear that you have practiced your presentation. Your time should be used effectively, information should be clear, and it should be no longer than 5 minutes. The overall appearance of your project, it should demonstrate excellence. So it should be very clear that you put time into your project and time into practicing your presentation. The project should be neat and organized, and the overall project should demonstrate creativity and an understanding of your law. So those are going to be the highest that you can score. When you look at your rubric, if you'll move to the right, those will show decreasing score points, and it will tell you how I'll be grading your rubric. So you have everything that you need to succeed on this project. This project is really about preparation. If you don't prepare adequately, then you will have points taken off. If you have any questions, you can email me, message me in Schoology, or come talk to me about it.